Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special episode of Help I'm an Adult podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with two of my friends to discuss safety, in particular women's safety. We're here to give you some tips on being safe when you're out and about as women, and also tips for guys on how you can actually play a part in making the women around you feel safe. So I hope you enjoy the conversation and you learn a thing or two. Thank you. Hi Emma, hi Gia. How are you guys doing? Hope everybody's fine.
Yeah, good, thanks. How you doing, Sharon?
Yeah, chilling, living life.
Good, yeah.
So I'm very comfortable.
Looking comfy.
Yep.
Love that. Yeah, I'm all good too, thank you.
Good. Just a quick intro for everybody watching. Basically, as in my planning for season 4 of Help I'm an Adult, there's big things coming up anyway with other friends. But I put out a thing to my friends to let me know in topics they want to talk about, and it was an opportunity for them to come on the podcast and talk about whatever it is they want to talk about, because people have been hearing from me for time. So, but then this topic came up based in occurrence with what happened to Sarah, may she rest in peace. And I thought, you know what, instead of waiting till season 4 to come out, we might as well just record this episode, talk about it, because we've had a discussion even before now about the whole thing. So talk about it, record it, and put it out before season 4 begins, whenever that is. So thank you guys for suggesting this topic and for even like going forward with it as early as now.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Honestly, thank you.
No problem. So Emma and Gia, you are in charge of this episode.
Okay, so I guess I'll start kind of with the reason for this episode. Like Sharon says, she's kindly invited us to be part of her lovely podcast, and I thought it was a really important topic, women's safety, in light of everything going on, and not just Sarah's story. I know, Gia, you're going to touch on Blessing's story as well. But I'm sure everyone listening to this knows, but for those of you who by chance haven't seen the story, so Sarah was walking home at about 9 p.m. on a Wednesday on the 3rd of March from a friend's house near Clapham Common. And she wasn't wearing, anything loose or suggestive. She was wearing trainers, trousers, a beanie hat, a big coat. But she was still, she was kidnapped by a active police officer called Wayne Cozens, and then ultimately murdered and then she was confirmed dead on the 12th of March. So it's a really kind of shocking story, not only because of what happened to Sarah, but also shocking by the fact that he's an active Met officer, and he was accused of exposing himself to women on 2 occasions at a South London fast food restaurant 3 days before her disappearance, and was under investigation at the time by the Met, but still had enough kind of freedom to take Sarah from the streets. So yeah, it's a really, really kind of shocking story. And it's the reason we're talking today. But I don't know, Gia, if you want to touch on sort of Blessing's story as well.
So it came out in the news recently, and I think it came to light again after Sarah Everard, what happened to Sarah Everard, and it just came to light because with Blessing's story, her body was found, and it was ruled unexplained, and there was no further investigation. So it just highlights, again, another woman, poor woman who's died, an innocent woman, no idea what happened to her, and and there's been no further investigation, and it happens way too many times. Obviously, with Sarah Everard, with her story, who killed her and everything, but with Blessing and with countless other women, they have no idea what have happened to them and their poor families. will have no idea. So it's just to raise awareness and highlight that there are still ongoing cases of women who have who've died and you don't know why or what's happened to them. So it's just to raise awareness for that as well, you know.
Yeah. And then have you seen many stories at all about what kind of happened at her vigil at Clapham Common? Have you had a look at those?
I've not, I haven't.
Yeah.
Really, but I've seen images, I've seen like Instagram posts and people talking about what happened, and that again is still appalling. Like,
yeah.
It's a vigil where people, like, vigils are meant to be reverence, they're meant to be like a quiet, still moment. Let them, obviously, like, I also understand there's always going to be certain people or individuals who come in to try and like shake things up, for which I think is disrespectful at a vigil anyway. It's because it's not a protest, it's not anything. It was a vigil, and even then, I still like it could have been dealt with in so, like, there were so many other options. I don't know in sense. It did not need to be what it was. Ugh, the world. Anyway, but yeah,
it's. I think, like, you know, the whole point of the visual was, you know, violence against women, having a moment at the community, you know, women coming together, you know, paying their tributes and having, you know, that moment together. And for the police to act in the way they did, and they were aggressive, they were violent, it's just so ironic, considering what the vigil was supposed to be. And you know, regardless of whether or not that the vigil was called off, and I know that the Reclaim the Streets, who were the organisers, they did call it off because it wasn't passed through the High Court. Women were always going to turn up to that vigil. They were always going to be there, and the police knew that. So they should have really worked harder with organisers to try and make it as safe as possible, because it was inevitable that people were going to go to that. And from what I've read anyway, from people that were there themselves, it was really peaceful up until about 6 o'clock, and then by sort of 6:30, 7 is when police came to the bandstand, because the crowd had got considerably larger, but then it turned aggressive and the atmosphere was altered. So yeah, it's crazy.
In a situation like that, I think this just crossed my mind, thinking out loud. If in a situation like that, the officers, if you're saying, okay, you still want the police to be present, do you think you just have deployed female police officers? Would that have made a difference?
Maybe, to be honest. I feel like yes, in a way, yes, because obviously as women, only we understand what us women go through on a daily basis with men. So for that reason, I would say yes. But then that shouldn't even be, I don't even think that should be a question. If you're a police woman or a policeman, you shouldn't, there just should be no violence at a peaceful vigil. People are trying to pay their respects, like you said, Emma, come together, you know, pay their respects and be united. And the last thing any of us or anyone at that vigil, any woman or anyone needs is violence and aggressiveness, you know. It's a hard time for every woman. Everyone knows, everyone feels that. So it's the last thing that anyone needs. I can't get over how disrespectful that is. I just can't get my head around it.
Yeah.
And
I know I've spoken to you both about this when we had a chat last week, but there is an app called Nextdoor, which is, I think it does have spaces outside London, but it's predominantly, I think, for the London sort of community. And there was someone on there who had posted about her experience of her being at the vigil. And she was saying how when she was there was a man who was drunk, disorderly, and he exposed himself to her at that vigil. And so she went to the officers on the common, because there were loads of them, and said, you know, this man's made me feel really uncomfortable. He's drunk, he's exposed himself. Can someone please come with me and deal with this? Which is, you know, what the police's job is. and a female police officer was going to go with her and sort of try and get the man to move on. But a male police officer stopped her and said, we're not dealing with any more of these rioters tonight, leave it, we're not going to deal with the situation. And I think that is even more shocking than the arrest of women, that this, you know, parallel has happened with the guy that's murdered Sarah. He's exposed himself to women and he's been investigated, but nothing's really been done. And then this same thing happens and the police stand by and do nothing, which is crazy, absolutely crazy. And it just shows that things like this, when they are more minor incidents in comparison to something as, you know, as heavy as rape or murder, it's not taken seriously, and it's not dealt with, and it just continues to happen.
Yeah. I was thinking, so in a situation outside of the vigil was going on, if somebody was walking down the street, that has just happened to her, minus outside of the vigil, outside of the riots, and you see a police officers down the road, you think, oh, great, I can report this.
Yeah.
That just, in my mind, I'm like, so would he still not have gone to help if it was outside of that situation? Because he literally blamed the fact that there were people there in the vigil and he didn't want to deal with the people. He's not like he didn't say he didn't want to deal with the man who just exposed himself. It was want to deal with rioters, which again, they were not rioters, but you know what I mean. And that just like, so you're not dealing with the fact that a woman does not feel safe because a man has just basically sexually assaulted her because no one requested that. And you're just like, nah. Like, it just blows my mind that that's something that a police officer would say to such a behavior.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
This is the problem, isn't it? Because this is how it then will escalate to these men raping and murdering women.
It's kind of like there's a line, and when you, or there's many lines, but when you step over the first line for the first time, say, you know, you're a guy in a club and you like touch a girl's ass, or you touch some other part of her, and you stepped over that line, then it's so much easier to then go over that line again and then do the next thing and then the next thing, and it's like these stages, and that it like you say, it progresses and gets worse because it's not stopped at the first stage where it should be, and these things shouldn't be happening even at the, you know, what you would consider more minor things.
Agreed.
But
again, at the end of the day, I do think it even needs to be stopped before it gets to that point. And I think this is where guys need to talk to their guy friends, and guys need to have this conversation amongst themselves. And when y'all are sitting there bantering about whatever it is you banter about and women and stuff, and you notice that there's just that one friend who's always going a little bit too far in what he's saying, that's where you need to like nip it in the bud and just be like, hold up, mate, like, don't get carried away. Are you okay? Is there anything, like, let's talk him off that ledge, because talking leads to action at the end of the day. I feel like because men they're just like, oh, it's just banter, it's lads, the lads are chatting, and I'm like, you can't blame it all on banter. When he's accused of rape or he's accused of sexual assault or something, you could be like, oh, but I didn't know. He's like, yes, you did, because he was saying that in that conversation and y'all did not like shut him down. You guys put him in his place. So,
and to touch on that, obviously it must be an uncomfortable thing for them to do, to call their friends out. But then at the same time, like you said, Sharon, if they don't call them out and then they end up, you know, doing something like raping or, you know, murdering someone, or you never know, or sexually assaulting anything, then that kind of will fall on them because they didn't call their friends out if they saw signs of that, you know. So there needs to be more, definitely, I feel like men need to be more aware and maybe educate themselves, or be more educated on how to pick out those signs in the guys that they know.
So, I think there's a lot that could be done to kind of, you know, nip it in the bud, even when they're younger. And I remember when we were at school, I remember having talks about bullying at school, but I never really remember having talks about harassment at that age. And like, you know, it's like you say, like when you're about 13, 14, 15, that's when there's like a bit of lad culture. And, you know, you sort of, you do throw away comments like, oh, you know, she's a 5 out of 10, she's a 6 out of 10. And that's like a really unhelpful culture that happens in those environments, because when your kid leaves the home and goes to school, that place is responsible for their behavior. So if they're not holding, you know, lessons like that on harassment, then these things go unnoticed. And I think it's probably worse in like an all boys school where you haven't got the other sex there, and then when they come out of that school, they don't know how to talk to women, and all of these sort of bad behaviors and cultures that are built up in that environment then transition into those public spaces when they become adults.
Yeah, that's so true. I definitely think, like, honestly, you just made, like you saying that just made me think back to school, and I don't even remember actually having anything really, any talks about harassment or anything like that. Like you said, there were definitely a lot about bullying. But when you think back now, it's just like mind blowing, because that should surely just be like a normal thing, and that you know, to be on the curriculum in schools. Yeah, so it's just shocking, isn't it, that we never even had that growing up. It's crazy.
No. And I feel like probably for kids nowadays, it's even more important because of social media and the access to the internet. That even like we had it kind of as kids, but you know, you still had like a flip phone when you were about 12 or 13, whereas now they've got, you know, iPhones. The internet is so accessible, and that is the problem for you know, young boys growing up who can access so many different things, and then without the other sort of lessons alongside that, then you know that can feed into the banter even more, really. And I think the hashtag going around "not all men" is really unhelpful, because we know it's not all men. Like we have friends, you know, our siblings that I never think in a million years would do like that. But it's enough men that these things are happening on a regular, on a daily basis. And I sort of looked into it, and it was kind of shocking. So just in the year from March 2019 to March 2020, the Office for National Statistics estimated that 4.9 million women had been victims of sexual assault in their lives, and this included 1.4 million who'd been raped or had faced attempted rape, and this is in a year. That data has been collected in that year, but I just think that's shocking. And then there was another statistic on convictions around rape. So they said there was 59,000 rapes reported to the police last year, and that obviously doesn't include the ones that weren't reported. And of that, only 1,439 people were actually convicted. So if you think about that number in comparison to that, it's just it's crazy.
The calculator and everything. Like, what percentage?
Sharon, you're the maths person. But yeah, it's just crazy.
2.5%,
which is sad.
2.5%.
Get convicted.
2.5%.
2.5.
So that's nothing, really.
Literally no one. Nothing.
Literally, yeah.
That's literally nothing.
Oh wow.
So
that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the problem. So I know one of the things we wanted to do was talk about kind of advice we would give to other women. So what have you both done to sort of protect yourself? Because I know this is something us girls, we you know, this is something we're constantly thinking about. It's not just, you know, on the off chance, you know, I walk home, oh yeah, that's fine. We're always thinking about, okay, well, what do I need to do if I'm going to get from A to B?
So for me, in like the uni days and all of that, even because I barely walk now, I drive everywhere, so I don't think about it a lot now. But when I used to walk a lot, which was my uni days, if I know I was leaving like uni campus late or something, I was walking back. I always had obviously the keys in hand, so like I always had that ready to go. If it was I was coming back from like going out with my friends, I always deliberately would accessorize with some nice rings that had extra bits on the top, if you get my
Yeah.
That's basically it. Obviously, when I'm walking, I'm somebody who likes to listen to music when I walk, but obviously at nighttime I don't do that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm always like headphones are out. A lot of the time I know it sounds bizarre, but this is probably I've said this is why I have a podcast. I talk to myself a lot. So I end up like having a conversation, like I'm talking to myself, and then they might think you're crazy. So they ain't coming near you. Like sometimes I'm
crazy.
I'm just making my plans for like when I get home. I'm like, so there's chips in the house. You put this in the oven. I'm talking out loud, but loud enough for only me to hear, unless you walk by me. You know what I mean?
Right.
But somebody who sees you from a distance might think, well, she might be nuts. But
she's talking to herself.
That's just
funny.
Yes, funny. So for me, what I usually do or have done is I always make sure if I'm walking in the dark, or if it's getting dark, I always make sure to speak to someone on the phone. I obviously have to be aware and vigilant of your surroundings. I'm always looking over my shoulders just in case. I don't like wearing headphones either, because obviously you need to be aware of your surroundings. What else? Yeah, I've had keys in between the fingers as well. Yeah, done that. I think that's pretty much the steps that I've taken. But I do actually have a few friends who have rape alarms.
Yeah.
And I've never. It's not. To be honest, I've never myself. I haven't thought about having one, but I do think it is a very good idea to have one. It's sad that we even need to think about this stuff, but I think it is key, and I think it is a good idea to have a rope alarm, or sorry, I just remembered something else. I don't know if you guys have seen that on iPhone, that there's a setting that you can put on your phone that can alert the emergency services, isn't it? I think it's like you hold your lock button 5 times, you press it 5 times, then it automatically calls your emergency contacts and the emergency services. So that I set up on my phone. So that's also another good tip.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one.
Another one that I would say, like, if you know you're going somewhere and you're probably going to be back late and like you're walking back, I always tend to like wear something bright colored and noticeable.
Okay.
Because again, like if I don't know, maybe it's just the dark skin in me that I'm like, I need to pop. But if you're walking, yes, of course, you want to be in like recognizable, something that someone can be like, oh, this is what she was wearing. And they can, you know what I mean? And so on, they can identify you easily. So even if it's like, that's why low-key, like glow in the dark parties are low-key pretty dope, because you an outfit and then step on the streets and people, you know what I mean? But so I remember I used to, like, if I'd go out, I would take like the one jacket that I knew was a bit colorful, or I'd wear a funky leggings or something that just is out of the norm. So it's not just, oh, she was wearing a black jeans and a black shirt. Like, people would, something that would distinctly make you recognizable. And
that's a good one. I've never really thought about that myself, really, to be honest.
Yeah, that's like a worst case of the worst case scenario situation.
Wow.
It's one of those things where it's just like if I was to go outside now, I'll feel better because this is bright and comfy. And like, so things like that I think would also help. Get yourself a bright colored something that you can wear on nights when you go in places.
I think for me, the one that I do quite a lot is I always share my live location on WhatsApp with like my partner or a friend or something to say, you know, I'm going home now. This is where I am. And then obviously if your location suddenly changes, then that kind of alerts that person. Or if, you know, you manage to keep your phone on you, then at least they can track that device. Again, thinking a little bit worst case scenario, but I think it always reassures me a little bit when I have that live, so that my housemates or whoever it is know that I am actually on my way home. And
I think I do that especially when I'm somewhere new. Like if I go, you know, like if you go on holiday with your friends and somehow maybe you guys get separated, or there's somebody who's gone home earlier or whatever it is. That would be like your situation to just be like, yo, do you guys want to share your location with me or with each other? So you just in case, again, or worst case scenario things, but these are the things that I definitely think we all, like, women need to do. Even not just women, like anybody needs to do this for their safety, to be fair. And your trusted people. And I also like the text me when you get home message that you can send your friends when you hang out together.
Oh my gosh, every time, honestly. And every time I leave my friends, I'm like, let me know when you get home safe, every time. And it's like an automatic, it's like a reflex. It's just an automatic thing, isn't it? That we do.
When we say it, before this, I know it's not before this happened, even when we say it, it's not like, I know I've never said it in the like, oh, something bad might happen to you. But then when it happened, I was like, oh, that is why we say it. Because of, so if something like if something like this ever happened, do we have any more tips? Anything that you've heard other people do that you've probably not done?
So the other one that I'd heard and was recommended to me during my uni days as well was there is a nail polish that you can wear that detects if there's a drug in your drink. If you for instance just put it on your pinky finger and you put it in and it turns a certain color, it means that someone has tried to spike you. And I think I was told on probably a few occasions, oh, you might want to sort of do this, particularly during my uni days.
It's just reminding me as well, like when I first started going out clubbing, one of the things that my mum always used to say to me is, don't ever leave your drink alone, don't ever leave it alone, always have it with you. And it's like, that's what we've been told since I was, you know, probably before I was 18, or like when I first started going clubbing.
I guess this is for people either going into uni to begin with, at the beginning of uni. Everybody's excited for their independence and their freedom. Actually, those who started uni during COVID times, when things on loose, like when we're out of restrictions and clubs open and all of this stuff, y'all need to learn to not don't just let loose. Yes, you want to get crunk and drunk, that's your own business. But please, like, you gotta do it reasonably. If you know you're gonna be, you want to, like, I don't know if what's the word they use to, like, get just drunk. I don't know. Tell a friend. I plan to be drunk. I don't advise you to.
I'm going to be paralytic tonight.
You know what I mean? Like, if it's like, tonight I plan on drinking a lot. If that's what you want, just tell your friend. I'm not saying like, I'm not condoning getting drunk and drinking a lot, but you know what I mean? Let your friends know so they can know to be sober or sober enough to be able to look after you. Because also, like, I know you've not had the whole freshers experience and all of that stuff. Even then, that's when all them predators out there will want to take advantage and just go loose in the clubs. So make sure, number one, just have trusted people around you, people who you know are looking out for you and your best interest, and you are also looking out for them. So your girlfriends, I'm not saying just girls, guys as well, your guy friends, make sure trust them enough, number one, that they're not the ones spiking your drinks, because there could be some shady people out there. that you think are your friends, but they ain't your friends. Number two, for them to be able to look after you in case something happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
so
you just gotta
important.
like get it together. Like, I don't care how young, how like, oh yes, I've been clubbing before. No, people have been locked up for a whole dang year. People are, you don't know what's been going on in their private lives for that whole year. People could be messed up coming out of this and just trying a whole lot of inhumane situations. So I just say, look after yourselves, please, please,
Yeah,
please.
and just to add to that as well, I'd say make sure if you're leaving a club, do not go home alone. I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah.
I think like I for me, like I always made sure that I was with one of my friends, that we always used to stay together, that me and we just always make sure that we're both going home together, you know, because that's another thing, you just don't know what can happen. And with taxi drivers as well, that's another thing. There's you hear things about taxi drivers, and that makes you not like, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it made me scared to be in a taxi on my own. I was like, I don't want to be in a taxi on my own now. Or if I ever was, then I'll always be on the phone.
Yeah.
No matter what, or following my location on Google Maps to make sure that I'm like actually going the right way.
Even in the daytime, I'm here like, can I go to the train station, please? I'm sober as heck, but I'm like, Google. And then you don't know, and you're like, hold up, how is this going to lead me to the station, please? Like, I always do that, either, like, always.
There was one other thing I wanted to add, actually, because when you were talking, I was just thinking, like, I know how when we think about the Sarah Everard story, when we talk about public places, we're thinking about kind of outdoors and parks and things. But actually, I think another public space which is now more addressed than it used to be, but it's still not good enough, is the workplace with male colleagues. And I don't know about you both, but pretty much every single place that I've worked in since I finished uni, I've had inappropriate comments from men that I've worked with who are normally considerably older than I was. I'm not going to obviously name names, but I think a job, not my current role, but a previous role, which again I won't go into, there was a guy who was about sort of 12 years older than I was, and he was like, he would sort of be a little bit flirty at work and in that space, but then when we go on work drinks, he then became really inappropriate because it was technically outside the office. And there was an occasion where he invited me back to his house, but to go and see his whips and chains in his dungeon. And he said, like, he said so blasé to me. He was like, oh yeah, come back to mine, you know, come check out my whips and my chains. Yeah. And he was being like quite serious about it, and he was like, yeah. And like, I'd only known this guy for like a handful of months, if that, and it was very inappropriate. He was a lot older than me, and I was just like, and you don't know what to do in that situation as well, because it's so awkward. And it's that in between space between actually physically being in the office, and then you're at work, like you're at work drinks, but you're technically outside, and then, you know, where's the line? And
oh no, there's that line is that line. I think that line is the same either.
I think he knows what that line is, but yeah.
That's the thing. I think guys need to know, like, the line is the same. I also think, like, hiding behind, I don't know if it's a men thing, if it's a British men thing or anything, but like, I hate the term banter. Like, I actually hate that term. Because everything is hidden behind, oh, it's just banter, oh, it's just a joke, oh, it's just like, no, for every ism that there is. So when I say ism, like sexism, racism, all the isms, somebody is always making a joke about it. But it's a joke that obviously is offensive, but it's like, oh, it's just banter. And it's like, no, that's a telltale sign that that's what they actually think. Unless you're a comedian who knows how to, like, you know how I like comedians who are able to To be fair, I don't really laugh at racial jokes or anything like that. But like, there's a way I feel like professional comedians know how to kind of make it work. To be
It's like a balancing act.
yeah, there's the
in a respectful.
yeah. So most of them when they make such jokes are actually being sarcastic though, which we know
like playing into stereotypes or something like that.
Yeah.
exactly. We know it's sarcastic, so we're like, oh, so we just take it because we know they don't mean it. But when you're not a freaking comedian, don't say any of what you're saying right now, because that's not funny anymore. It's not, it was never funny to begin with, but because society has made you feel like, oh, you're the jokester of the group, you think it's okay to keep going. Like, that is not okay. Banter is not an excuse. It's it's like someone saying they hide, like, because then you're giving yourself the excuse to hide behind some kind of ignorance when you're not ignorant. You know what you're saying. You know what you're saying is not okay. That's why you feel like you can hide behind the funny, but it's not either. So yeah, I think with workplace situations, just as we are continuing the fight on racism and being anti-racist and all of that stuff, I think the same thing is to apply when it comes to sexist behavior and anything gender related.
When guys are out and about and it's evening, there are things that you can do as well to make women feel safe. So, you know, if you're going down a street and a woman's on her own, maybe hang back just a bit to give her that breathing space, because although you know that you're not going to do anything, she doesn't know that, and will automatically think, is this guy safe? If it's not safe, it's always on your radar if someone's behind you. So I think hanging back is like a good thing that you can do. And also you can always cross the road, so you're on the other side of the road to the woman. So again, she's got that space and a bit more of a boundary, so she feels safer. Or if you see a woman that's like, you know, a bit drunk, she's on her own, ask her like, oh, do you need me? You know, have you got a friend that's near you? You know, shall I call your friends for you? You can help in that way as well, to try and look out for, you know, women that you see.
I have seen incidents where a girl, like, I've seen some, maybe I think I was coming back from the library or something, and this girl was pretty drunk. And this guy was literally like, can I help you? And the girl was like, don't touch me. And she was like shouting. He was like, I just want to know, like, are you okay? But then I realized, like, if it was, so I literally had to tell him, like, it's fine. I'll like figure, because then when I went to talk to her and I was like, you're drunk, do you have any friends? She was like, no, I don't know who my friends are, blah. And then I was like, okay, that's fine. She like responded calmly towards me. But I feel like the fear instinct in her was like, oh my God, this guy is coming to me. I'm not okay. He might try to do that. So I think if you're in a group and you have a female friend there and you see such a thing, maybe send the female friend to just go check on her. It's like just to be like, hey, are you okay? Is there anybody we can call for you? Kind of thing. So anyway, that's it. We've been gone for like an hour and a half, y'all.
I know.
It's fun.
It's a topic that we can talk about for a long time.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to mention on here before we close?
Well, I was going to touch on the bill going through Parliament, but that's quite a long one. But I can just briefly just say what it is. So there's a bill going through at the moment in Parliament. They're discussing it this week, and it's called I've got it down here. Oh, it's the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill. So it's being debated by MPs this week. And basically it's giving police stronger powers against protests. So this was more, I sort of more wanted to talk about because of the visual and other sort of protests as well. This bill kind of, the sort of key bits from it is that it would impose a start and a finish time on all protests, which obviously doesn't fit everyone because people work at different times. People might need longer to get to a certain area. It also sets noise limits, and you can apply these rules to a demonstration just by one person. So one person with a microphone and like a cardboard, sign can be fined £2,500. And I think those things are really subjective as well. Like, what is too loud? If you're protesting for a reason, you have your voice wants to be heard. And it's just another one was around encampments. So it was to stop them. So in 2019, and I remember because living in London at that point, and there was loads of protests done by Extinction Rebellion, and they put this huge boat in the middle of Oxford Street and like blocked off all the roads basically, and the police were furious, and I remember everyone talking about it in London, oh, Extinction Rebellion. But because they did those things, that's when people started talking about them, because they went to those lengths. So this bill kind of stops them being able to do that, and police kind of breaking that up. But the one other thing about the bill which I read about, which I thought was a little shocking, was that currently you can be given 3 months of prison for doing damage to memorials which have a monetary less value than £5,000. And they in this bill, they want to change that to up to 10 years in prison for damage to memorials that are worth less than £5,000. And I think this is in reference to the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston in Bristol that got knocked in the river, and then suddenly we need to protect our memorials. And 10 years worth in prison is probably more time than some rapists will get. And it's crazy. And that particular statue that did get knocked in the river, pretty good reason for it not to be there anymore. And really maybe be thinking about what statues they have up and doing a review of those, rather than punishing people for wanting to get rid of really racist memorabilia, really, just out of public view. So I thought that was quite shocking about this.
10 years.
It is. It's shocking to see that. But you know what? At the end of the day, as long as we as individuals are doing our part to kind of move that needle, no matter how tiny it is, in the right direction, and that's why I like this podcast. I'm looking like, do I ever need to edit this? I might just edit like the mini gaps in between, but we might as well let it all out. Thank you very much for joining.
Oh, this was really good.
It was so much fun, and I'm hoping, obviously, when this comes out, everybody is able to pick up 1 or 2 lessons from it.
Thank you for having us. And,
no problem.
Thank you so much.
On your platform.
No problem. More in season 4, I'm sure. We'll see more of you guys in season 4. But for now,
thank you so much.
I love you both.